Negar Mortazavi is a political analyst and host of the Iran podcast. She joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Hi there, Negar. Thank you for joining us. So, Iran's government says it does not want war with Israel or the West, but Iranians are celebrating the attack on Israel tonight. Hezbollah says they were beginning to feel abandoned by Iran before the attack. Palestinians tonight are saying they no longer feel alone because of the attack on Israel. What do you make of the relevance of Iran's retaliatory strike on Israel?
Well, I think Iran has been exercising a little bit of restraint, as they called it, or patience after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, which they saw as an attack on their sovereignty. It was an Iranian soil in the Iranian capital. And tried to see if the new reformist president and administration, President Pezeshkian, can sort of push diplomacy instead of the military response to come to some sort of agreement or ceasefire in Gaza, which is something they've been asking all along. And then with the assassination of the Hezbollah leader and alongside an Iranian commander, I think the calculation in Tehran is that, okay, it looks like if we don't hit back, we're going to get hit even harder. And there was also talk among the so-called resistance, Iran's allies, that maybe Iran is not a good partner, a good ally to rely on. They're essentially a paper tiger. And what is a red line to which Iran is going to enter and respond? So I think at the end of the day, the commanders won this argument in Tehran over the diplomats, that this is the time to react with what Tehran is really framing as another warning shot to Israel. But then at the same time, the diplomats and the reformist president, the moderates, are coming out saying this is a one-off, another situation of escalate to de-escalate, and it could be similar to what we saw back in April between Iran and Israel.
Do you get the impression that Iranians, Palestinians, people in Gaza, even others, people around the world observing what's happening that continues unimpeded, want there to be a more militarized response to Israel because of what it's been doing?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I want to just keep emphasizing that I think this is missing from many of the reporting and analysis, that this war has taken a very, very huge toll on civilians, and it continues to do. First, Israeli civilians, then tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, and now Lebanese civilians, and potentially, if the situation escalates between Iran and Israel, Iranian civilians, and maybe more Israeli civilians. So this war is not helping anyone in the region. But at the same time, I think the big power, the real country here with leverage to try to stop it or break up the fight is the United States, the one country who's actually not in the region. And the United States has immense leverage over Israel as its biggest supporter. They can also, use their leverage, which they haven't in the past 10 months, and with the negotiations and mediations with the other side to bring a ceasefire and essentially an end to the fighting. And they haven't done that in the past 10 months. Really. They haven't really utilized their leverage as much as they should or they can.
Negar, just a few hours ago, you tweeted, quote, "The U.S. is the adult in the room now. They can help de-escalate this conflict, as they did once in April when Iran and Israel had a tit-for-tat episode, or they can let this escalate into an even bigger war. This is a major crossroad." Which road do you think the U.S. will eventually take in the end?
Well, that's a million-dollar question. I would say from the messaging that I've been hearing just a few hours today from U.S. officials, they don't sound very escalatory. In fact, the United States senior officials are signaling that this wasn't a really successful attack, that they helped the Israelis sort of in the defense and to intercept and essentially stand to this attack, which is similar to the comments we saw or the signaling from the U.S. back in April. Essentially, the ball is now in Israel's court. Iran has attacked, and we're waiting to see what the Israelis are going to do in response. But the measuring of the Israeli response, I think, is going to be seen in the messaging that's coming out of Washington. Basically, is the United States going to participate in the attack in an offense against Iran, or are they just going to limit it to defense, which is what they did back in April and helped prevent that episode from becoming a major escalation? Again, it can be a watershed moment to sort of lower the heat, or it can also be a moment where the U.S. can essentially be pulled into this expanding conflict and into a major devastating war in Iran.
Negar Mortazavi, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking time to speak with us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.